Is this working for you?
Yeah.
Good, good. I could stay here till 11:30. I took a nap today. Some of you guys were on the train so long you must have jet lag. So we won't take time to have any feedback right now. I like to do that, but I want to just keep going because I got a lot of stuff. Okay, small church needs, big word here, more active involvement from its members. People need to be. There's a woman that I learned from when I was really young. I lived in Los Angeles. I went to Life Bible College. And 4 miles away was Hollywood Presbyterian Church. And there was a woman there that she was a public school teacher in Minnesota, and they hired her to come and run their Sunday school because their Sunday school was struggling in the late 1940s. So I went to Bible college in 1965. She was an older woman by then. And I read a book in my last year of college about her life. And it was written while she was still alive, but she had just died 2 months before. So I discovered this woman 2 months after she died. And she ran the Sunday school, but she also taught a college-age Sunday school class. And she was a great Bible teacher. Her name was Henrietta Mears. And I could have, for 4 years, attended that thing every Sunday night, and really, I would have probably learned more about the world and ministry and mission than I did in school, because she was incredible. She would disciple, this is what got me making disciples in small groups. She would have 8 young men come to her house for breakfast every Saturday morning. And it would be like the same 8 kids, college students, for a year. And then she'd pick 8 more. One of them was named Bill Bright. He went on to start a thing called Campus Crusade for Christ. The book that I'm going to give you a book tomorrow that I wrote, and it's published by something called Baker Books. They just bought Regal Books. Regal Books was started by one of her 8 young men a long time ago. There's 52 Christian ministries that are big. Have you ever heard of Young Life? That came out of her group. Billy Graham was just their Youth for Christ used to have like 5 young guys going around the country with tents preaching, and Billy Graham was one of the 5 until he hit Los Angeles, and Miss Mears got behind what he was doing with her college students, and 100,000 people came to hear Billy Graham in over a 2-week period of time, and that's how come Billy Graham became Billy Graham. And this lady was incredible, but she had something she would do that really stuck with me forever. When I started the first church, I couldn't find a single book on how to start churches. They didn't exist. And so I read the story of her life. It's called Dream Big, if anybody's interested. But I read the story of her life 7 times in a row to just learn what can I get from this woman. But you know, you can almost always tell who's new in church because they come early or they come on time. And they kind of look around, they're looking at the bulletin boards, and you know, they look lost or anything. So she would always grab, especially she'd go after men. And you know, she taught me, a woman taught me, that if you want to have a strong church, put men in visible positions of responsibility. Because if you don't, men get the idea that church is just for women and children. But if you put men up there, she would say, if you got a man who can barely do a job and a woman who could do it well, choose the man. And we do, you know. If you come to my church on a Sunday morning, the big service, well, the small service too. The small service is 3 men and 1 woman in the worship band. The big service has got about 12 people. There are 3 women out of the 12. And the other thing about the big service is there isn't a white person among them. And I am thrilled about that. Because I'm in a multicultural community, and if we're not a multicultural, when I went to Hawaii, almost all the churches were just little white islands. Hawaii's mostly Buddhist, and it's all changing. But I'm going to stick men up there, and I'm going to. I mean, this you're going to think I'm faking this one, but I actually used to stand in the back of church because everybody but white people has black hair. Have you noticed that? If you're Asian, you got black hair. If you're Indian, you got black hair. If you're African descent, you got black hair. Only white people got blonde hair, brown hair, whatever. And so I've actually had the people who moved from California with me to start the church, I warned them, we're going there to reach the people who live there. And we're going to give you a job to do because we got to set up. But once there's anybody that's local that can take over your job, you're going to give up your job. And so they got mad at me and called me a reverse racist. But I'd go stand in the back of the church because I always hang out and greet people on the way in while the worship's going on. I seldom am in worship, and because I just want to touch the people. But I'd go stand in the back of the service while worship is there, and I just kind of look across the heads. And if I start to see a lot of blonde hair, we're having problems. And we had one guy, he was Portuguese and Hawaiian, but he would never recruit. And the problem that we have in Hawaii is white people always volunteer, and everybody else has to be asked. Hawaiian people talk pidgin English. You know, they talk the kind, man. And so the parents teach them, you're stupid because you don't talk like the white people. But the parents talk like that, that's how they learn to talk that way. The school teaches them, you gotta speak proper English. We had a guy he's astounding. He started a church of 800 people. But he worked on my staff, and I was gone on a trip, so I heard the story secondhand. But he talks pidgin, heavy pidgin. He was a drug dealer in high school. He was a thug. He weighs about 400 pounds. He told me, I never had a girlfriend in high school. I could buy sex for drugs. I didn't need to have a girlfriend. And so he got saved, but one day he was griping in staff meeting that he wished he could speak proper English like Pastor Ralph. And you know, there's white people and then there's white people, right? The white guy, the white guy, who just, it's like, you wonder, why do you live in Hawaii? You don't think like everybody else, you know? You gotta live in Scandinavia. But he leads over to the guy and he says, hey, the guy's name is Guy Capelliella. He goes, Guy, you want to sound stupid all your life? Until now, Guy gets mad because he thinks that this guy's saying this because he talks pidgin, right? And then the guy goes, if you want to sound stupid, try to sound like Pastor Ralph, because then you're going to sound stupid. If you want to sound like you know something, and try to sound like Guy Capelliella, because Guy Capelliella speaks pidgin, and he speaks it well. And Guy is a wise man. He's done incredible things. They've started a bunch of churches, but he had to learn to be himself in order. Am I making sense? So I got this friend. He's my really good friend. Mark Sisso is our worship leader, and he won't recruit. He always takes volunteers. So pretty soon, the whole worship band is white, or mostly white. And so I would get up and just, you know, he's sitting down and I'm standing up. So I made the announcements and I preach. And I'd go, hey, everybody give applause for the average white band. And you just got to do stuff. You got to, you know, be real and do whatever you do. But I was telling you a story about Henrietta Mears. She'd grab off the guy that looked like he was lost, and she'd give him a bunch of bulletins and hand out the bulletins at the door the first time he came to church. Or she'd stick an offering plate in his hand on his first Sunday there and have him be an usher. There are things you don't need to be trained to do. Or you do need to be trained, but your mother already trained you. So you can do them in church, but here's the point that I learned from Miss Mears. People need to be needed. And the quickest way to get somebody to bond with your church is to let them know that you need them to do something. And in smaller churches where we don't think about perfection, it's far easier to do that than it is in large churches where we do think about perfection. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the Guy Capelliella story. We may not even get through the notes on it, but I told this last night, so you got to forgive me. Guy came, there was two guys that ended up on our staff at the same time. There's a guy, he's struggling against cancer right now, He actually was going in for a treatment today. I saw it online. Not a treatment, but they think he's clear. They thought he was going to die 6 months ago. They said he got stage 4 cancer. It's everywhere in your body. They gave him some weird drug that made him horribly sick, but they think it made him well. Anyway, his nickname is Sumo. His name is Blaine Sato. And there's a reason they call him Sumo, and you could probably guess what it is. And he lived in a town called Kaneohe. That's where our church was. And he was the thug of Kaneohe. And Guy Capelliella lived in the town of Kailua next door, and he was the thug of Kailua. And they both ended up on our staff. And at different times, both of them, and they're both talking pidgin all the time. Sumo's into surfing. They did a benefit picnic fundraiser in Huntington Beach, California, because they thought he was dying of cancer. He needed help with the paying for the thing. They thought 800 people would show up. 10,000 came out, and they put him in the Surfers Hall of Fame. And he says the community is my church. I pastor the community, and he's got little Bible studies going on. It's amazing what this guy's done. But he was the bad boy. He would just say, I just beat people up because I didn't like the way they looked. But he goes, the only guy I was ever afraid of growing up was Guy. Later on, Guy told me the only person he ever was afraid of growing up was Sumo. But Guy was real shy when we first met him. I mean, he'd gotten everything he wanted by being a thug and just punching people's lights or whatever. But so when it came to being a Christian and having to be normal, he didn't know how to talk to people. He was afraid of people. And I'd see him come in at 5 o'clock in the morning, because we were in a public school for 16 years, and he'd come in 5 o'clock in the morning to set up children's church so we could have church beginning at 7 o'clock, our first service. And then I'd see him, because big guy sweats a lot, and he'd be out in the car when I'd come to church around just 6:45, and he'd be out in the car toweling off, and he'd put a clean shirt on and come into church. Well, he told somebody that he thought that maybe God was calling him to be a pastor. But the guy's so shy, he can't hardly talk to anybody. And so I've had people on my staff are actually making fun of him. That, thinks he could be a pastor, he can't even talk to people. And so they got a scolding. And then we had a problem. We made these little cards that you could use to invite people to church. It just looked like a business card with nobody's name on it. Just had the church stuff on it. But it looked like a real business card. Turned out Guy was writing his name on there, printing his name on there, and giving them to girls and using it to pick up girls. So we had to take away his job. He couldn't set up Sunday school anymore. Anyhow, as time went on, one Friday night, I came to church. It's exactly the story I told last night. I come to church, and he'd gotten on a worship band. He played guitar. And my friend lived across the street from him. And he said that when Guy first became a Christian, he would always be yelling at his father and swearing, saying horrible words. And he said, then got learned to play the guitar. I started hearing worship songs and horrible words coming out of the house. And then I started hearing more worship songs and less horrible words. And then pretty soon it was all worship songs. And eventually his dad got saved and came to church. His dad just died 4 months ago, and it was real touching. But this is the way it is. People don't just get saved and changed. They do, but not everybody, right? So Guy's in this process, he's changing. So he's playing backup guitar on one of our worship bands. And one Friday night I come to church, and this guy Corey Grinder is supposed to lead the worship. And he must have been sick or something, because in the parking lot I can hear, the church had already started, I can hear a different voice. And all of a sudden I realize who it is. And I said a bad word. It's like, oh, I won't say the word. But it's like, what's he doing up there? Well, I get in there, and it's like, you couldn't believe it. I mean, people were caught up in the Spirit of the Lord. And not only could you feel the presence of the Spirit of the Lord, but there was a sense of people want to follow that guy. There's something that's just a natural, the Bible talks about spiritual gift of leadership. He's got it, and he never knew it before. None of us knew it before. And so then I decided that first chance I got, I was going to bring him onto our staff, because that's the best place for us to disciple people. We had about 20 people on our staff at the time. And so we had an opening come up. We needed a college pastor. And I wanted to hire him for that, although he had never been to college. And my staff all said no. And so I always kind of do what they say, and so we didn't do that. Well, then my secretary moved to another island, and I went from having a beautiful Chinese secretary to having an ugly Hawaiian secretary with a goatee and that weighed 400 pounds. And so I have the distinction of having had the ugliest secretary in the whole world. And then I found out I couldn't type. And so we had to teach him how to type. But the cool thing was, we worked together, and he learned a lot just of what a pastor does, and especially as a pastor of a bigger church. And then eventually we needed a men's pastor. He became our men's pastor. And then he went and started a church in Kailua where he grew up, and where he knew all the kind of people who mostly needed Jesus. And when they started the church, they started in a movie theater, and his office was his pickup truck. And he got one of those deals so your computer can go on the internet, from your pickup truck. And there's a place where there's a boat landing, and there's a bunch of big trees there, and he'd go hang out there. And that's where all the guys would go and smoke dope. But it's also where Shaquille O'Neal would go and hide out when he went to Hawaii, because the people wouldn't bother him there. I had another friend who bumped into Shaquille O'Neal in the Ala Moana shopping center. It used to be the biggest shopping center in the world. And he's coming running around the corner, and he bangs into this big guy. And he's all embarrassed, and he's one of these guys that should live in Sweden too. Anyhow, he looks up and he goes, "Wow, you're really big. Do you ever play basketball?" And the Shaq goes, "No, I play a little water polo sometimes, but I never play basketball." And he walked away. And this guy that was with him comes back to my friend Al, and he goes, "Do you know who that was?" And Al knows nothing. And he goes, "No." And he goes, "That's Shaquille O'Neal." And it's like, but the guy stands out in a crowd, right? So he would always hang out at the boat ramp in Kailua, because those people down there would just treat him like a regular guy. Well, Guy Capelliella hung out at the boat ramp and got a chance to share the Lord with a guy that nobody would think that they could get within 100 feet of if they wanted to try to share the Lord with them. He never accepted the Lord, but he got to hear about the Lord because of a guy who used to buy sex with drugs, who ended up wanting to be a pastor but thought it was wrong to talk pidgin, and got himself into a situation where it was okay to talk pidgin and those are the kind of things, and you don't have to be big to do those kind of things. Am I making sense? Yeah. Well, the problem in a big church is that we have a slogan, everybody plays, and it's only a dream in a large church. You get a church of 500 people, and it's not true. And 300 people, we have about 100 on Team Hope out of 300. So we got 200 spectators and 100 players. When we were at 150, we probably had about 100 players and 50 spectators. Small churches, here's the deal. We just need more small churches. Yes. That's why he's going to be on you about planting churches. We need more small churches. And if you're sitting around griping because your church isn't big, instead of thinking about how can I start another one, you're missing the boat. Because what we really need is more small churches, because they can get into the nooks and crannies the way that a weed gets into the nooks and crannies, and they can grow everywhere, and that's a good thing. So most small church members have the privilege of serving each other, and every member gets to discover their spiritual gifts. Most people that don't know their spiritual gifts. That's why we do these spiritual gifts tests, which I think are kind of dumb. Almost everybody in your church, if you're in a small church, can go, "Oh, I know what his spiritual gifts are," but they can't go, "I know what mine are." But you all see what the other people are good at, and that God has invested in them, and that that get together and share, and people start to find out, and then they do more of it. A greater awareness of need. People miss you if you're missing. If you're sick, they know you're sick. We've had people, as our church got larger, that got sick, and they couldn't come to church, and nobody called them. And then they got offended, and then they quit church. In a small church, that's not going to happen anytime. Everybody soon knows if you have a problem. One of the good things about small churches is called gossip. In small churches, you don't call it gossip, you call it caring. It's true. In the church that I just came from, the big church, as it got bigger, then you started having these waves of people who are all upset about people gossiping about me. In a small church, it's like they care about me. And so, again, we just need to do it. People are more willing to help rather than just let the church do it, because they understand they are the church. If they don't do it, it's not going to get done. Is this good? Yeah. You're starting to look tired, so I think it's a good time for us to quit. Or do you think I should go for 10 more minutes? No. People are shaking their head no, so we're going to quit. Thank you very much.